Ranking the 16 head coaches. All right, let's start with Steve Sarkisian. So I'm doing WHBQ radio in Memphis this morning. They asked me about where Sarkisian is ranked, and they said that was a little low. So I'm going to start a little out of order, and then we'll go down the entire list. Where do you have Sarkisian?
I have Steve Sarkisian at number 9. Now,
that's crazy.
I will say this up front. A lot of this is, I think, like the SEC, it's so different from just about like 7 years ago, where I actually think the SEC's collection of head coaches is very good 1 through 11. And it would have been 1 through, and honestly, this is with Nick Saban retiring. I think the SEC coaching is as good as it's ever been right now with, it was last year maybe. With
I hadn't thought about that, but I would agree with that. With Saban last year, I think you had 2 what could be legendary coaches. You have a bunch of up-and-coming coaches. You have what Mark Stoops is doing at Kentucky. Except for Shane Beamer and Billy Napier, I think pretty good shape last year as far as making that argument the best group of SEC coaches ever.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember there was a period where like you had Butch Jones and Ed Orgeron and Chad Morris and Brett Palima and I mean, I'm just like, oh yeah, this was mid 2010s. It was man, Butch Jones and Ed Orgeron were coaching in the league together, Dave.
No, that doesn't make any sense. I remember saying to myself at SEC Media Days, I'll tell you one thing, LSU's, they're loaded, but I can't see Ed Orgeron lifting a national championship trophy. I was wrong. Number 16, let's go to the list as we rank the coaches in the SEC. Head coaches, Shane Beamer, number 16.
That's crazy.
The only reason I'm saying you're crazy is because I think Billy Napier is the worst coach in the SEC, but he'll be 15. Why did you choose Beamer over Napier to be the worst?
Because part of this is your overall resume, and I'm not going to take away what Billy Napier did at Louisiana before he went to Florida. He won 4 straight division titles, 2 Sun Belt titles at that level. Now, you can come back at me and say, I mean, and I say this all the time, when you're at a lower level school in Louisiana, it is so easy to be very good because you need gas money and you'll go find some guys at a high school down the road that'll go play for you. And
this is going to be for me.
You suck, you jackass.
You're right. I mean, Napier is going to find another job as a head coach somewhere at a smaller school. Beamer is on his path to career assistant, maybe coordinator.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
Sam Pittman at number 14.
That's crazy.
I like Sam Pittman.
So wait, let me just address Beamer real quick.
Okay.
Since he is 18-20 at South Carolina. He's 20-18, excuse me. He should be 18-20. If not for Connor Stallions, he would be 18-20. That's why I have him low. So Sam Pittman at number 14. Why are you so in love with Sam Pittman?
I'm not in love with Sam Pittman. I guess I just respect him. I respect the game that he was raised in, which is, maybe it's just that I think he's very likable. But I think that's about the best Arkansas can do. So I know we're not talking about coaches on the hot seat, but he is on the hot seat. But I don't know that Arkansas can go out and hire a better coach than Sam Pittman. I just think they have those limitations.
I don't think they have that limitations. You can't be as limited as Sam Pittman. I'm sorry. Sorry. I don't mean to go there, but like Sam, like they have Walmart money, so that's not true. But 2, you can't be as limited as Sam Pittman. You can do better than him.
Okay, fair enough. I think that program has a lot of problems. I don't know why they're still playing in Little Rock, to be honest with you. Clark Lee.
Hey now.
I'm fine with him at 13. No arguments there. Now it starts to get really interesting.
Where people get lazy is they're like, people are like, oh, Clark Lee should be at 16. He's been the worst. Yeah, because he's been at Vanderbilt.
Clark Lee could do the same thing, especially with Connor Stallions, that Shane Beamer has done at South Carolina.
Yes, exactly. Like it's you have to grade these on a curve, and Clark Lee's on a massive curve.
Okay, now the next 2 are going to create some debate. Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and then you have Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. So most people, I think, would have Venables above Lebby and even higher on this list after what he did last year. But you and I'm not going to argue with you because I think last year was a fluke. I think their schedule is incredibly difficult. Again, not a hot seat conversation, but I do not believe he is an elite coach. I might not have him as low as 12, but not to the point that I'm going to play the sounder. Jeff Lebby, I know you really like at Mississippi State. Thoughts on those two?
I think Jeff Lebby is the best hire that anybody made in college football this offseason. I'm not even kidding you guys. Jeff Lebby is a guy. I'm having a hard time wondering why I didn't put him higher on this list because it's only because of lack of qualifications. Jeff Lebby conceived the offenses for Josh Heupel and Lane Kiffin. They are products of offenses they conceived working with Jeff Lebby.
Hugh Freeze at 10. As a pure X's and O's coach, he's better than 10. However, we have to factor in what he's done as far as breaking NCAA rules at Ole Miss. A lot of those were under his watch. All of those were under his watch and maybe even his purveyance. So are you counting the fact that he's had NCAA issues or why you have him at 10, or you just think as the X's and O's he's 10?
I think it's the cheating, but it's also, and it's the other factor that's underrated, Dave, is that he made some mistakes last year that I didn't think were possible for a coach that I thought was of his caliber. I'm going to be honest. A part of the reason I knocked him so far down was the defensive call against Alabama in the Iron Bowl. That's the worst defensive call I've ever seen in my life. And how could a coach be
remind people.
It was 4th and goal from the 30. If they get a stop, they win the game. Hugh Freeze rushed 2. By the way, that's stupid on its own because if you're going to rush 2, just don't rush anybody, right? Just have those extra guys back in the secondary. Rushing 2 does you no good. He drops another guy in spy. Do you think Jalen Hurts or Jalen Milroe is going to run 30 yards for a touchdown on 4th and goal from the 30?
I don't know. Joe Milton tried it.
Well, yes, that's true, and it didn't work.
Okay.
Do you think he's going to successfully do it? It's the worst call in history.
No, it's really bad. We talked about Steve Sarkisian being at 9, Eli Drinkwitz at 8. I think most people would have him higher, maybe above Brian Kelly at 7, but
Hey now.
I'm with you. I think that Brian Kelly is a better coach. We're about to get to Heupel and where he ranks, but you've got Eli at number 8, Kelly at 7. Eli had a better year than Kelly last year. Why?
Okay, so I dropped Brian Kelly significantly. People would ask why. The real question is, why is Brian Kelly so close to Eli Drinkwitz? We're talking about a guy who has coached for 30 years, has 200 career wins, is pushing 300 actually, and played for a national title at Notre Dame. And the answer is that Brian Kelly, like Hugh Freeze, made a lot of on-field coaching mistakes that dropped him significantly on my list last year. I'm sorry. It's kind of an indictment against him that he hasn't even come close to playing for a national title in 2 years at LSU, given the talent down there. And I'm going to say that Brian Kelly moving Harold Perkins over to middle linebacker has been such a stupid decision, and he wasted a Heisman quarterback last year.
Okay. I agree with that. I'm not as high on Kelly as I was, and I wonder now how he's going to stack up against SEC coaches like Josh Heupel.
As for Eli Drinkwitz, before we get to Heupel, Eli Drinkwitz went 11-2, but had really just one quality win last year. Took advantage of a very weak schedule, and I still can't overlook him having a losing record his first 3 years at Missouri. I'm not going to undo that for just 1 year.
Are you counting Tennessee as a quality win?
Yes.
Okay. You have Josh Heupel at number 6.
Josh Heupel also fell on my list.
Okay. Now, what I would like to do is I want to come back to Heupel, okay? Because I want to go through who you think the top 4 are and then how Heupel compares. Okay, so you've got Mike Elko at A&M.
Wait, I forgot Mark Stoops at number 5.
Oh, sorry, I did forget Mark Stoops. I scrolled too quickly. Mark Stoops at Kentucky, who has done an incredibly respectful job at Kentucky. Whether or not they can ever be title contenders, I don't know. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, you and I both like him a lot. Kalen DeBoer, that's the guy they targeted, went out and got. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss at number 2. Kirby Smart at number 1. There's really no argument for Kirby. However, based off what I've seen, and there's not as much longevity, but if you're asking me that I have to hire one of these coaches out of the top 6, Heupel, Stoops, Elko, DeBoer, Kiffin, Smart. Well, you have to say Smart. You would probably have to say DeBoer since he got to the college football national championship game last year. Outside of that, I'm taking Josh Heupel. So does that make him number 3 on my list?
That does, and I think you're crazy. And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
I'm not saying Josh Heupel can't be that way, but Josh Heupel has shown some really, really bad red flags that I haven't seen from these other coaches. One, player evaluation. You just told me went after Dante Thornton because he fell in love and thought he could immediately be better than Squirrel White when every sign showed Squirrel White was an elite slot receiver, and that's not who you needed to go after. That's a big miss. Thinking Joe Milton was better than Hendon Hooker is one of the worst evaluations I've ever seen a head coach make in the history of football. And I don't know how anybody could ever have seen those two and thought that Joe Milton was better. I don't believe him about the practice player stuff, and I'll never believe him about that. I think he misevaluated, and I think it's because Joe Milton was his guy. I haven't seen that from these other coaches. And then there were some play calling issues last year, Dave, that kind of actually rubbed me the wrong way that made me drop him a little more.
I will be honest with you. I want to hear about them, but if they're offensive play calls, I almost totally just erase them from my memory because he was so limited at the quarterback position. But go ahead.
Okay.
I want to hear the calls.
Well, some of them don't have. No, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't mind. I've always told you guys I don't mind when he goes for it on 4th and 1. I do mind when he goes for it on 4th and 1 from the shotgun. He was getting under center in 2022 with Princeton Fan. He could have done that last year and he didn't do it. That bothers me. The other thing that bothers me is that he doesn't make in-game adjustments at all. I mean, he is John Chavis level with in-game adjustments at this point, and that's bad.
I think he expects his system to work. I think he expects his system to eventually, Philip Fulmer used to say, running the football, pound the rock. I think that Josh Heupel has a similar type of approach in that if he runs the football, his offense should work. So the fact that he sticks with his plan, yes, I'm all for in-game adjustments, but what in-game adjustments are you supposed to do when you're limited at quarterback? I mean, it's not as if anybody ever asked Nebraska to break out of the triple option and do something else. If they didn't have Tommy Frazier or Eric Crouch, then they're not going to be nearly as good. Caleb, I just don't know what adjustments you could have made with limitations at quarterback.
You're talking about there's got to be something because they're saying themselves that Missouri threw a totally different defense at them, and that's why they lost that game. Well, if that's the case, then they were obviously preparing for something specific to that defense. And you couldn't have noticed when they threw something totally different in the middle of the game. I mean, I got to knock that against them. And then here's the other thing you have to knock against them. With the exception of Kentucky and LSU, which, again, LSU on the road does not count when they're at 11 because LSU fans don't get up for 11 a.m. games. They don't have a quality road win under him. They're horrible on the road.
Well, it still counts. I mean, they won on the road, but I agree with you that was a challenge for LSU. Let me ask you this. In 5 years, you've got Heupel 6. Let's say all these coaches keep their jobs, which they won't because they'll have other opportunities or they'll get fired. Where do you think he'll rank in 5 years?
I think he could go as high as number 2. Let me go through the list. Maybe number 3. Mark Stoops, you said, I think Mark Stoops is stuck at 5. I don't think he's going to have the chance to prove himself to be any better than that because he's at Kentucky and he's not looking to do anything else. But he's maximized. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, again, Ivy League hire at a school loaded with talent. I think what he could do is off the charts. But I think Josh Heupel could do better because of the NIL. It depends on what happens over the next couple of years. Kalen DeBoer at Alabama it is surprising me. It has the chance to be good. And he already is more accomplished than Heupel, but Heupel could surpass him. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, I think Heupel could surpass him too. I know you think I'm crazy for Lane Kiffin at number 2, David.
I've covered both of them. I think Josh Heupel's a better coach than Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, but Lane Kiffin is like low-key, like really brilliant. Like he's like that socially awkward but really smart kid.
Right. I would take Josh Heupel as a better overall coach because now we're seeing recruiting from him. But if they had to sit down and go X's and O's, I might go Lane. That would be
right.
That would be a tough call between the two. You're talking about 2 heavyweight championships. You're talking about champions. You're talking about Foreman and Ali in terms of offensive football. The SEC. Well, so you've got in 5 years you could see Heupel at 2 relatively easily.
I mean, I'll say this: if Heupel, I'm not just going to dismiss him potentially passing Kirby Smart. If Heupel wins 2 titles at Tennessee, he would surpass Kirby Smart at Georgia because Tennessee's a harder place to win 2 titles at.